미래 사회, 인류에게 가장 중요한 것을 말하는 시간, 미래예측 박영수 교수입니다. 지난 100년간 포춘 500이라는 게 있어요. 그중에 포춘 10, 10개 기업 중에 7개 내지 8개가 석유회사였습니다. 100년간 누가 돈을 싹쓸이 해갔는지 우리는 알 수 있죠. 그런데 2013년부터 변화가 왔습니다. 이제 7개, 8개, 9개까지 가던 이 석유 회사들이 빠지기 시작하고 거기에 구글, 애플이라든가 MS 같은 이런 기업들이 인터넷 기업이라고 하죠. 들어가서 세상을 바꾸기 시작한 거죠. 이제 석유의 시대가 종말이 온다. 이런 것을 말할 수 있습니다. 오늘 미래의 부는 누가 차지하는가, 앞으로의 누가 최고의 부를 가져가는가에 대해서 특히 에너지 전문가인 토니세바 스탠포드 대학교 교수님을 Would you like to introduce yourself?
Toniseba. I am a Silicon Valley entrepreneur. I was an early employee at Cisco Systems, which built out most of the internet. I went to MIT undergraduate school, studied computer science, and then I did my MBA at Stanford. And I've been in Silicon Valley basically, either in startup companies or starting companies or joining startup companies ever since. And over the last 12 years, I've been teaching at Stanford University.
Yes.
Yeah.
Know that you've been writing a few books, and Clean Disruption was a big hit, and it is still selling well in Amazon. And also I translated the book, which is called Energy 혁명 2030. So would you like to tell us about that book?
Yeah, Clean Disruption essentially says that there is the most massive transformation of energy and transportation coming over the next 10 to 15 years, and essentially says that by 2030, all energy, or most energy, will be solar. Most energy will be stored, and all vehicles will be electric, self-driving, and car-shared. So 4 key technologies: energy storage, solar energy, electric vehicles, and self-driving cars are going to totally destroy the existing system of energy and transportation that we've had for 100 years. And all of this is going to happen by 2030. It's going to be over by 2030.
It's going to be over,
over.
Not starting.
No. It already started. So it's over by 2030. Yeah.
Wow. There are many companies also in Korea, Samsung SDI and some LG Chem I, producing ESS.
Yes.
And how does ESS will be disrupted? Will disrupt the automobile or solar industry?
Energy storage systems, batteries, are going to disrupt, are the enabler, are a key technology to enable 2 things. One is storing solar energy, which of course the sunshine only happens during the day. Storing solar is becoming so cheap that soon it's going to be cheaper than even the cost of transmission, but we can talk about that. So ESS storage is going to be able to store the energy of the sunshine or the energy of the wind so that it can be used later. And similar type of batteries will be used for electric vehicles. And batteries are the main cost component of electric vehicles. But batteries are coming down at about 16% per year. And so batteries, as you said, are one of the key enablers for this whole clean disruption.
There are many different kind of batteries, like
Yes.
lithium batteries, and what other batteries are.
So there are many chemistries for batteries and so on, but lithium ion is for now is the winner. So lithium ion is the one that is getting the most investments, the most research and development, and the more demand from car companies and also for grid storage for ESS companies. So even though there are other types of chemistries, lithium ion is the one that has the combination of energy density, power density, and length, duration, cycle length, that can be used for both grid storage and for electric vehicles.
Wow. And electric vehicles
Yes.
can be the, what do you say, it's running, what do you say, the electricity?
It's a power plant on
Power
wheels.
plant, yeah, power plant
On wheels, yes. So, yes.
What is it?
So, electric vehicles are disruptive, meaning that they are going to transform transportation, and they're going to. So, electric vehicles are going to do to gasoline cars what digital cameras did to film cameras. So they're going to just wipe them out. They're going to disrupt them for many reasons. One is that on a per kilometer basis, electric vehicles are 10 times cheaper to charge.
10 times cheaper.
Yeah, 10 times cheaper than gasoline. Also, electric vehicles have only 20 moving parts, and gasoline vehicles have 2,000 moving parts. So it's 1% of the moving parts, which means that maintenance, they never break, right? So maintenance is going to be anywhere from 10 to 100 times cheaper for an electric vehicle than it is for gasoline cars.
So it lasts a lot longer.
Of course, yeah,
it's
yeah.
only 18 to 20 moving parts.
Exactly. So maintenance is essentially free. It's going to last a long time.
Like 8 years? What do you say?
No, it can last. I mean, electric motors last for decades.
Decades.
I mean, the experience that we have so far is that, you know, the main thing that breaks in electric cars, all you have to do is the wheels. You have to replace it, but that's it. The electric motor doesn't break, and you know, everything else is electric. So what is going to happen, because it's so much cheaper to use and maintain, but right now they're more expensive to buy. But when electric vehicles get to the same price, purchasing price, as gasoline vehicles or diesel vehicles, essentially it means that it's going to be in consumers' best interest, best economic interest, to buy electric vehicles. And I'm talking about EVs with 320 kilometer range, which is the minimum that you need to go to the mainstream market, to the average consumer, not to the green consumer. And that's going to happen within 3 or 4 years. So the point at which EVs are going to be cheaper to buy than gasoline vehicles, and also they're going to be 10 times cheaper to run and maintain. That's going to happen by about 2020. 2020. And at that point, basically the market is going to flip from gasoline vehicles to electric vehicles.
2020.
And by about 2020. And of course, just they're going to do to gasoline vehicles what digital cameras did to film cameras.
So the Tesla is offering infinite mileage warranty.
Yes.
I heard they're doing that?
Infinite mile warranty. They never break. So in 8 years, you can drive your Tesla to the moon, you know, and back, and they'll still warranty the car. That's because they don't break, you know?
Yeah.
Which means for the consumer, it's free. It's free maintenance.
Also,
right?
for the electric vehicle, if you fully charge with a supercharger, and you can use it at home as electricity to cut down KEPCO electricity, something.
So you can do two things with electric vehicles that you cannot do with gasoline cars. One thing is, if you have solar power in your own house, you can store that power in the vehicle. You also can store, you go to work and you power your electric vehicle and you bring it back home and you power your home with your electric vehicle. So essentially it becomes a power plant on wheels. And you can,
power plant on wheels.
Yeah, it's a power plant on wheels because you can charge it at work or, you know, you can go to the parking,
charging station.
the charging station and so on. Then you bring it back home and you plug it in and you charge your home.
Yeah.
You can power your home for a couple of days with the power in the electric vehicle.
And also charging stations will be free. Tesla is now giving you free charges.
Tesla and Nissan, for the charging stations across the country, they're giving power for free.
You think they will give you free charging up to certain years? Or I've heard that if you read or if you watch advertisements, commercials, then you can charge it for free?
Yeah, so there are new companies that are in Silicon Valley that basically will give you free charging in exchange to the right. So they go to a supermarket, for instance, a Walmart, and they say, you know, in exchange for giving us the right to have a charging station and to have advertising in that charging station, we will give charging for free. As long as they shop at your store. So everybody gains. The store can say, oh, you shop at my store and you get free charging. The company, like Google, advertises, and that's how they make money. And for the consumer, essentially they get free, zero, right? Gasoline cannot compete with zero. That's zero, right? The cost of driving, zero.
Yeah, interesting. Also, self-driving cars.
Yes.
Self-driving cars can be also disruptive.
Very disruptive. So self-driving cars essentially mean that, so today we spend a lot of money for buying cars, and yet we only use them 4% of the time.
Yeah, 96% you pocket.
Exactly. So it's such a waste of time. It's such an inefficient use for, you know, our money, for the land, and so on. So what self-driving car would offer is essentially the possibility that when you go home to work, essentially the car keeps driving. So it takes you to work and then it keeps driving, and then when you need it to go to the supermarket or to the bar or back home, essentially it comes to pick you up. So from being used about 4% of the time, a self-driving car could go to being used 60 or 80% of the time. So what essentially is going to happen is that for the same level of service that we get now, meaning we go from anywhere to anywhere whenever we want to go, we're going to pay about 10 times less.
10 times less.
10 times less, which means, just to give you an idea, the average American spends about $12,000 a year in owning a car. And that includes the cost of the car, of the gasoline, of the insurance, of the parking, everything. That is going to go down to about $1,200 a year. So essentially we're going to keep $11,000 per year for not owning a car, and yet we're going to get the same level of service. So they're very disruptive.
Self-driving cars are getting cheaper because of the LiDAR.
Yes.
Getting cheaper and cheaper.
Very
and it's
much.
a 1K at the moment.
Yes. So some of the key technologies for self-driving, the sensor called the LiDAR, which is, it emits about 1 million laser pulses per second, about 100 meters out and 360 degrees. And then it takes in its laser pulses that bounce back like a radar. And then when they bounce back, you have a supercomputer in the trunk that processes all that information and decides, okay, so here's a car coming at me at 100 kilometers per hour. This is a cat crossing the road, and this is a tree, and so on. The cost of LiDAR over the last 5 years has gone from $70,000 to $250. Wow. So, you know, it's more than 1,000 times cheaper than it was 5 years ago. And the same thing with the computing power. So the most important technologies for self-driving are in the hundreds of dollars, not in the tens of thousands. So the cost to go self-driving is going to be about $1,000. Yeah, very cheap, very cheap. Yeah, like a computer. Yeah.
And the other disruptive technology will be, of course, solar panels and solar everything.
Yes. So solar, again, it's another technology, and solar from 1970 until today has gone down in cost by about 220 times.
220
Right.
times.
And at the same time, every other energy source, like nuclear energy or coal or gas or oil, every single one of them has gone up anywhere from 6 to 16 times. So since 1970, solar has gone down by about 3,000 times relative to nuclear power. 3,000 times, yeah,
relative to nuclear
power. So essentially, solar has already made nuclear obsolete, and is making every other source of energy obsolete. And so much so that soon in every market around the world, solar on the rooftop, unsubsidized, is going to be cheaper than the cost of transmission.
Yeah.
So even if you could generate at zero,
like coal plants.
Right, in coal plants or nuclear plants or any plants, when you add the cost of transmission,
zero transplant.
Right. Even if you, of course, it's impossible to generate at zero, but even if you can, essentially solar on the rooftop is going to be cheaper.
Yeah,
it's going to be
because
cheaper.
they have a solar rooftop and then it's downright without transmission.
Exactly. You use it where you generate it, right? And then you have a battery at home to store it for the evening. So essentially every other form of generation is going to be obsolete.
So grid parity or God parity.
Yes.
When does it come?
So grid parity is the moment when rooftop solar becomes cheaper than what we pay for electricity. And grid parity is already happening in hundreds of markets around the world already. According to a bank report, by the end of 2017, solar will be at or below grid parity in 80% of world markets. 80%.
Wow, 80% of world markets.
World markets, right? 80%. And what that means is that users are going to continue, and basically it's going to accelerate adoption. And that's by the end of 2017. God parity, which is a term that I invented, it has nothing to do with religion, but God parity is the moment when solar on the rooftop becomes cheaper than transmission. Right? So at that point, every consumer, every business is going to go out and buy solar panels because central generation will never be able to compete with rooftop solar. That is going to happen. And essentially every market around the world, in Seoul, in Berlin, in Sydney, in California, by 2020.
2020?
Yeah, by 2020. And
so we only have 3-4 years?
That's it. That's it. I mean, if car companies don't go all electric by 2020, they're out. They're disrupted. If energy companies don't go solar by 2020, essentially they're out. They're disrupted. And this is already happening.
We have Hyundai Motors and Capco and all those. If they're not prepared, they'll be out by 2020.
They'll be out, and they can't wait. So, meaning that you can't wait until 2020. By 2020, because the market is already growing, and basically by 2020 they need to be there, and the car companies need to have. Because it's a power plant on wheels, because it's a computer on wheels, it's mostly like a technology company. It's mostly like a computer company. So they need to have version 2 or 3 by 2020, not version 1, right? So if they don't have version 2 or 3 by 2020, they're essentially gone.
Wow,
right? They're essentially
shocking. It's shocking.
Kodak.
Remember Kodak disappeared.
Gone, right? Gone. Remember Nokia?
Nokia gone.
Gone, right? So it's going to be like them. And nobody thought that they would be disrupted, but they were disrupted in only a few years.
So you are telling this to us how many years ago, and people did not believe it, and now they
So clean disruption came out just about 2 years ago, and it was hard for many companies to believe that this was going to happen so quickly. And by now, the cost curve, everything pretty much that I said in the book is happening, and pretty much as I said it would happen. So now they're paying attention. Now utilities are paying attention. Now oil companies are paying attention because the disruption is happening already, and it's happening as I predicted necessarily. Yeah.
So you're running around like crazy all over the world to tell them that you're disruptive. You will be gone. You'll be out.
They're inviting me. They're inviting me. Petroleum companies are inviting me. Utility companies are inviting me. Money managers, investors are inviting me to give talks to explain to them how this disruption is happening already and how it's going to keep happening like that. And so I've been going around the world. Essentially, the last year, I've been on the road pretty much all the time.
Yes, so, I know. 1 week you're traveling, 6 continents.
1 week around the world, essentially, So I'm happy to be in Korea now, but then in 2 days I'm going to be in Washington, D.C., and then the day after I'm going to be back to Sydney, Australia, and that's the way that my travels have been going.
Everybody wants to listen to you now.
Yes, now they're paying attention.
They
want
2 years ago.
2 years ago, a lot of people were doubtful, but now everybody's paying attention and everybody's inviting me to speak to them. So.
And I see the changes in Korea too because of the book Energy Revolution 2030, Energy 혁명 2030. And I was invited by the 자승 스님 조계종 총무원장님. He's the chief monk of the Buddhist temples here in Korea.
Yes.
And they would like to implement the solar, all of the areas of mountains basically. Some of the barren areas with the solar panels.
Yes, it makes sense. I mean, it makes sense because solar is getting cheaper than any other form of energy, and it's also cleaner, of course, right? But it's getting so much cheaper that it makes sense. And after you pay the financing, which is about 20 years, essentially you have free generation forever, right? I mean, not for centuries, but for decades, free generation, and nothing can compete with that free. So it makes sense that if you have a lot of land and a lot of rooftops, then that's